opens the central diagonal for the queen and bishop, immediately contesting key squares. Solidifying the center and preparing for a fianchetto or a more robust pawn chain, black signals an intent for a classical positional struggle. Claiming central space, this pawn push immediately contests the e6 defender and sets up future pawn breaks. Opening the f-file so aggressively risks king safety and creates immediate pawn weaknesses in black's position. Paving the way for a fianchettoed bishop, white solidifies the kingside and prepares to eye the long diagonal. Developing a knight to its most natural outpost, now seeks to control central squares and prepare for castling. Positioning the bishop to eye the long diagonal, preparing for future pawn advances or piece maneuvers. Solidifying the kingside pawn structure and preparing for castling, this development gracefully avoids early complications. Solidifying the center, this knight prepares for a kingside castling, aiming to bring its monarch to safety amidst the unfolding pawn storm. Solidifying the pawn chain and preparing for potential pawn breaks to challenge white's central space is the core idea behind this centralizing maneuver. Securing the monarch is paramount, preparing to connect rooks and activate them on open files. Securely tucking the king away addresses immediate safety concerns, preparing to contest the center. Broadening the queenside by preparing to fianchetto, the light-squared bishop offers flexibility and potential for future pawn advances on that wing. Repositioning the queen to e8 supports potential central breaks and connects the rooks. Positioning the queen centrally aims to challenge black's queenside buildup and prepare a central pawn push. Exposing your queen on the flank like this invites swift counterplay and disrupts your piece's development. Developing a knight toward the center offers support for the d-pawn and prepares for future pawn breaks. Coordinating the knights for a central assault, this piece solidifies black's ambition to pressure the kingside and contest the d4 square. Instantly disrupting black's queenside ambitions, this bishop aims to dominate the long diagonal and create new attacking possibilities. Repositioning the bishop to this square prepares to challenge the central tension and possibly expand on the queenside. Pushing the d-pawn seizes central space, restricting black's queenside mobility and preparing a potential queenside expansion. Retreating the knight allows for a potential kingside pawn push and clears a path for other pieces. Injecting knight aggression, white aims to disrupt black's pawn structure and potentially open lines toward the vulnerable king. Unlocking the center with this capture creates immediate tactical complications and opens lines for both queens. Exchanging the bishop streamlines white's development and opens the d-file for immediate pressure. Reorienting the rook to a more passive square offers no immediate compensation for the pawn deficit and the weakened kingside. Reclaiming the outpost, the bishop redirects pressure, aiming to exploit the weakened dark squares around black's king. Unleashing the d-pawn opens a diagonal, creating immediate tension for white's queen and potentially disrupting central control. Regaining the pawn opens up the h5-e8 diagonal, aiming to exploit any weaknesses around the black king. Aggressively creating chaos, this gambit seeks to overwhelm white's coordinated pieces through sheer audacity, hoping to capitalize on any misplaced defender. Asserting control over the central open files with the rooks is a crucial step towards dominating the board. Initiating a tactical detonation, black exchanges knights, aiming to unravel white's central grip and expose the king's flank. Reclaiming the bishop on d5 secures a vital outpost and prepares to dominate the d-file, creating immense pressure. Opening the c-file with the bishop retreat offers potential for centralized pressure, but neglects piece activity on the kingside. Controlling the central files now becomes paramount, aiming to exploit the exposed black king. Exchanging the bishop there finally dissolves white's central grip, opening pathways for counterplay. Recapturing the pawn opens the queen's diagonal, directly threatening the isolated e-pawn and centralizing the queen. Reasserting central influence with the knight offers flexibility, aiming to untangle black's slightly cramped position. Unleashing the bishop creates fascinating geometric pressure and prepares to exploit the weakened queenside structure. The rook bravely occupies the open file, aiming to disrupt white's queenside structure and contest central influence. Expanding queenside space, this move initiates a daring pawn storm, aiming to unravel black's defenses and exploit the open b-file. Unlocking the queenside potential, this pawn advances, daring white to commit their own pawns and potentially weaken their structure. Opening that queenside flank creates immediate tension and aims to disrupt black's defensive setup by exploiting the slightly exposed king. Opening the b-file now dramatically accelerates the confrontation, creating a dynamic battleground for the remaining pieces. Reclaiming the open file, white aims to exploit the doubled pawns and target black's weakened king position. Asserting control over the queenside and aiming to disrupt white's pawn structure with this knight's repositioning. Reclaiming the open e-file secures a significant positional advantage, opening up attacking possibilities. Pivoting the rook to the open, a file aims to exploit the queenside pressure, disrupting white's pawn structure. Injecting immediate pressure on the 7th rank, this maneuver aims to shatter black's pawn structure and exploit the exposed king. Retreating the queen now allows for better pawn structure, but a dangerous open file looms. Repositioning the queen to pressure black's queenside pawns adds a new layer of tactical complexity. Abandoning the king's safety, black concedes valuable space and allows white increased initiative along the open files. Sacrificing a rook for a knight opens lines and forces concessions on the queenside. Securing the now opened 8th rank with the rook offers significant defensive stability. Unleashing a tactical hurricane, this maneuver aims to disrupt black's defensive harmony and expose the queen's precarious placement. A brave attempt to reignite activity by challenging the queen, but it concedes the d-file permanently. Capturing the knight opens the b-file, forcing black into a defensive posture and creating decisive pressure. Unlocking the file opens a dangerous diagonal for your queen. Unleashing a pawn storm, white aims to shatter black's queenside structure and expose the king. Initiating a counterattack on the queenside, aiming to disrupt white's passed pawn. Recapturing exchanges simplifies, aiming to activate your queenside majority. A decisive endgame transition begins with simplifying the position and initiating an attack on the exposed king. Securing the 7th rank with the rook allows for potent future threats and restricts black's rook from exploiting the open file. Reclaiming the e-file for centralized pressure signals a clear intention to challenge white's central pawn chain and potentially launch a counterattack. Seizing the open file, this capture initiates a decisive endgame advantage by eliminating black's key defender. Now with the king emerging, black seeks safety and centralization, hoping to regroup. Unlocking the 7th rank, this pawn's advance initiates a decisive push towards promotion, creating immediate endgame pressure. Faced with the looming passed pawn, the black king's retreat to the back rank is a forced defensive posture. Opening the kingside pawn structure for aggressive king hunting. Trading pawns, black opens a central highway and seeks active piece play against white's exposed king. King's safety takes precedence. The monarch now has an escape route on g1. Placing the king centrally unlocks escape squares and eyes the pawn promotion threat. King activation is key now, venturing out to secure that precious pawn edge and potentially threaten black's king. Unleashing the pawn storm creates attacking potential, but potentially weakens the king's shelter. Unleashing the king offers dynamic counterplay, seeking active squares amidst the pawn chaos.